Okay, a 26-year-old woman comes to the physician 6 months after delivering a baby by lower segment transverse cesarean section. She is worried about the appearance of her cesarean section scar. Exam shows a linear erythematous raised suprapubic scar confined within the original wound margin. Biopsy of the scar shows dense collagen fibers organized parallelly to the surface of the epidermis. An increase in production of which of the following mediators is most likely responsible for the changes seen in this patient's scar? Option A, platelet activating factor. Option B, tumor necrosis factor alpha. Option C, interleukin 10. Option D, transforming growth factor beta. Option E, thromboxane A2. And option F, matrix metalloproteinase 3. So here you did great. So it is, transforming growth factor beta. So TGF beta is especially responsible for that process. No, so the pathogenesis of excessive scar tissue, that is hypertrophic scar keloid, involves an excessive production of certain isoforms of transforming growth factor beta. Okay, so if there is excessive production of TGF beta, it's going to cause problem, that is hypertrophic scar and keloid. Okay, at the site of injury when compared with normal wound healing, this TGF beta isoforms increase angiogenesis during the proliferative phase of wound healing and increase the fibroblast proliferation and collagen deposition during maturation phase of wound healing. TGF beta would prevent collagen breakdown by decreasing the activity of metalloproteinase, okay, and upregulating tissue inhibition of metalloproteinase. Excessive production of platelet-derived growth factor and connective tissue growth factor are implicated in excessive scar tissue formation. Okay, so you have to understand there's two processes, keloid and that is called hypertrophic scar. So hypertrophic scar wound is limited, a scar is limited to the boundary. It is not proliferating excessively. If it is proliferating excessively beyond the margin, it is keloid. Okay, so interleukin 10 is something, it is anti-inflammatory. So please have, if you don't know, then you should know the function of interleukin 10, interleukin 1, 6, TNF alpha. Okay, so go back and review your pathology or immunology. What is the function of interleukin 10, TNF alpha, and interleukin 1? Okay, so here platelet derived, why not option A? So platelet activating factor leads to platelet aggregation and chemotaxis of leukocyte, that is neutrophil macrophage, to the site of injury, and it is involved in the inflammatory phase of the wound healing, which occurs 1 to 3 days after the injury. The elapsed time and change in this patient's scar are consistent with the maturation phase of the wound healing. Okay, so platelet derived 4-5 is not associated during this phase. So what happens? These things happen early in the cycle. Okay, what happens? There is bleeding, hemostasis, granulation tissue, and there is granulation tissue is replaced with a scar. So these things happen early in the platelet activating factor. These things are happen early in the cycle. Okay, not later in the cycle. Okay, so please type in the chat box which collagen they're gonna ask. These are the real exam question, and whenever I say they ask in the exam, it does not mean it is something in your Q bank. I'm talking about real exam question. Okay, that's great. So Dr. Jill saying collagen tissue, granulation tissue type 3, and yes, what happened? Granulation tissue have type 3 collagen, and which is replaced during maturation phase. Whenever it is transferred into a scar, that is type 1. Okay, so you keep it in mind. And one more question that is a very hit question of exam for step 1: after the 2 months, after the maturation phase, after the 6th week, what is the percentage of strength the scar get? What is the strength? It is not going to be like normal tissue. No, if there is cut injury, if there is a scar is never going to be like a normal tissue. So what is the strength? You are close, Dr. Hiren, you are close. I'm glad you answered it. You say 70, actually it's 80. Okay, so you have to say 80. Okay, yeah, Dr. Jill, exactly, it's 80. Okay, so almost 80. Okay, it's not more, more than, you can't reach 100. Okay, and one thing you remember, if there's a deep cut, you're gonna injure the basal cell. You remember the skin layer. I have a mnemonics, something called country looks green since Bhadra. Actually, I'm from Nepal, and in Nepal we have our own calendar. We don't follow, we do follow Jan Feb, but we generally follow our calendar, that is Vaisakh, Jesht, Asad, Shravan, Bhado. So there is a Bhado. So in the Bhado, there's a rainy season. So, during rainy season, country looks green. So I have made my mnemonics. Country looks green. So corneum, lucidium, green, granulosum, since spinosum and basale. These are the skin layer. You have to know it. Okay. So basale is at the bottom. So if there's a deep cut, you're gonna injure the basal layer. Whenever you injure basal layer, in the basal layer of the skin, there is a stem cell which can proliferate. If you have superficial injury, you will never have a scar because you still have a stem cell in your basal layer. So they're gonna make new cell, and it will looks like there was no never there was an injury. But if you have a deep cut, if you cut the stem cell in the basal layer, you will never have skin at that part. It is gonna be healed with a scar, okay? Because you don't have a stem cell to proliferate, no? So that is how you're gonna have a scar. So you have to know the pathophysiology of scar, where you're gonna have a scar and where you are not going to have a scar, okay? Okay, so now T1 necrosis factor alpha is a pro-inflammatory cytokine secreted primarily during the inflammatory phase of the wound healing. So these things, TNF alpha, platelet activated alpha, these things are secreted early in the phase of healing, okay? That is 1-2 days after the injury. The role of TNF alpha on the maturation phase of the wound healing and collagen deposition is less clear. Recent studies has shown that hypertrophic scar contain lower amount of TNF alpha than normal scar. The increase in production of a different cytokine is primarily involved in fibrosis and hypertrophic scar.
Thanks for watching. Please give a thumbs up and subscribe for more.